Welcome to Venture with Joe and Cody, where we take a deep dive into the minds of leaders and innovators making a real impact today. I'm Joe.
And I'm Cody. And we're here to bring you the raw stories, the successes, and the setbacks that these trailblazers have experienced in their journey to where they are today.
Every week, we sit down with a new guest who's ready to share their insight and advice on business, entrepreneurship, and making a difference in their community. From local community members to industry experts, you're going to get the unfiltered truth behind their success.
So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned professional, or just curious about the business world, join us for a journey of learning and inspiration.
So let's grab a drink, settle in, and let's get started. This is Venture with Joe and Cody. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Venture with Joe and Cody. I'm Joe Skipper with eXp Realty and Skipper Realty Group. I didn't say that right, but that's Cody with...
I think you did.
Yeah, I normally say Skipper Realty Group with eXp. The owner, CEO of eXp. No, CEO of Skipper Realty Group, brokered by eXp. If I was the CEO of eXp, you and I probably wouldn't be talking. No offense.
Probably not.
I'd be such a big deal. I'd be all over the place.
I'd be begging you to get on my podcast.
It's hanging by a thread after I became CEO of eXp.
Yeah. Like, please, Joe, just give me one episode.
I need the leverage, man. I need it.
Yeah.
No, I am not going to be the CEO of eXp. Well, who knows? Maybe we'll
you never know.
Down and say, remember when you thought you couldn't do it? No.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and something's going to happen, and they're going to look like, who's the next CEO going to be? Let's look. Hey, what about this guy?
Yeah, what about this guy? He's got a podcast in Oregon, like right under Joe Rogan, like as we were talking about in our live stream.
Yeah, just right below.
Yeah, right below. Well, today I was going to talk about inspections, if you wanted to.
Yes.
So for those of you out there, a home inspection most people have heard of a home inspection. Basically, you can, once you're under contract, generally you ask for a home inspection. An inspector comes in and writes up every single thing wrong with the house that they see. So those inspections can be very long and look very intimidating. And so I wanted to go over them as a real estate agent, but I also wanted to go over them as a lender because you're not allowed to see them, or you don't want to see them, or there's rules with all that stuff. So, and I'm curious about like some of the things that you are okay to hear as a lender and some of the things that you don't want to hear, or, you know, if you did hear, then something triggers you guys to freak out over on the lending side. So, yeah, so and it spurred me today. You and I had been talking prior to the show about, a client of mine that, normally I like to, we all have different clients and how their tolerance is for different things. Some need you to hold their hand through every single thing, and that's great. You feel like you've done it all and got them all, squared away. Some, you're like, I don't you don't hear from them for a week or 2 weeks and like, no, we're good. We're, we saw the inspection report. Here we go. No big deal, blah, blah, blah. But there are times that we've had that, and I found out recently a client who, was kind of stressed out about it, but didn't really mention it. And we talked through it and kind of was like, we should maybe talk about inspections with Cody and Joe.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Let's do it. Let's unfold it.
Well, I would just say that, for one, I think the biggest thing that people need to, or, I'd like people to understand is every inspection looks terrible for your home. The inspector their job is to be able to determine everything that's wrong with the house so that you can make an informed decision as a buyer on whether you want to go through with it, what you care to take on, what you care to not take on, and it allows the room for further negotiation for the buyer to say, hey, we need these items fixed, or we want closing cost credit, or blah, 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 blah. So, I think my first thing is to say, do not be intimidated necessarily by a 70-page report from an inspection. That's normal to get it. I know that sounds like a lot, but it is a book of basically, here's what's wrong with your house. Anything from serious issues like mold or rodents to, you're grading, you have too much bark dust by this side of the house, or your plants are touching, the house. And I'm like, okay, that's every house. I wanted to kind of just say that in general to people, but to get you involved in this conversation rather than me just be blabbing the entire time. I guess let's start with how is a lender involved in an inspection, if any? How's the lender involved?
So typically we're not really too involved in the inspection part of anything. Where I get involved a little bit more is going to be when there's something that's bigger that does show up that could potentially be something that the appraiser might notice, where it's like, hey, this thing, because the appraiser's not going to look at things like an inspector will, but they're going to notice the obvious things that are structural issues or like health and safety related things. So most of the time it's a roof related thing, or maybe a concern where there's some electrical wires that are exposed, they're not covered up, or something that would just be obvious to anyone to see, like, hey, that probably shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
Those types of things that will show up on the inspection report that might already be known, but they kind of stand out a little bit more as you're going through them. So for all of the small stuff, we're not involved at all. And I tell people too, like, I don't need a copy of your inspection. I don't want a copy of your inspection. That's really between you and the seller and figuring that out. If you want to share things with me to ask questions like, hey, is this going to be a problem for financing? I'm more than happy to dive into it and figure that out. From a standpoint of we don't need anything. I don't need a copy of the inspection. Yeah. Even there are some loans that we have to prove or document, verify that there was an inspection done. Like some down payment assistance programs, you have to get a receipt showing that an inspection was paid for, but we don't have to verify anything with the inspection. Okay. We don't need a copy of it. So I'm not really super involved in the inspection part of it, which is good.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just curious with what is, okay, you'll always have like, newer agents or newer clients. Like use your words, Joe. What is the mandatory thing for you? So say I accidentally send you an inspection, just like the whole thing. Like, is there requirements on the lending side that you give them to the underwriter? Because ultimately for people that don't know, the underwriter is kind of the bigger, Cody's not the bigger issue. It's the underwriter that if they see something, it triggers them to read, their ears perk up and they're like, uh-oh, what's going on? So is there any rules that's like, hey, Cody, I accidentally sent you that inspection. Do you have to give it to the underwriter? Do you have to disclose everything? What's the rule with that?
No, I don't know the official rule. I don't know if there is a rule on any of that, but I can say that if it were to make its way into the file and the underwriter saw it,
then they're going to see it. Yeah.
Then they're going to see it. And that's the hard part too, is like once it's in there and reviewed, then they could ask for anything and everything. Yeah. Because they all look like concerns. Yeah. So I if it comes to me, I'd kindly send it back and say, I don't need a copy of this.
I washed my hands of this.
Yeah. I didn't look at this. I think you sent this to the wrong person.
Yeah. Sent this to the wrong person, blocking you now.
But because it's not it would be very different if it was something that was, them trying to skirt around income related things or asset related things or something where they're like, hey, can I use this or do this? Might be a little bit of a different story, but because that's not any part of what we need for any loan process, then we just would say, cool, I'll just hold on to this, but I don't need to say, because this made it to my email, now I have to pass it along and we're kind of screwed here.
Well, I guess there's two questions for you. One particularly to you or your company, and I've heard this a lot through agents, but one in a more general. There's different standards for inspections, like depending on the loan type, correct? Or different, I wouldn't say inspections, but it all leads to the appraiser, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So you were saying things like, a VA loan, for example. Let's use a VA loan. Like they're the more strict appraisals that happen.
Mm-hmm.
It leads to an inspection. So what are some of the things that the appraiser will see on a VA loan that we need to know when we see it on an inspection that we're like, okay, this is going to come up?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that triggers you guys to be like, what's going on here?
The ones that stand out the most are double strapping the water heater. Some houses just have one strap, like VA and FHA will require two straps. Peeling paint on the outside, usually like the trim, but the thing with all of these they just need to be fixed.
Yeah.
It's not like
the issue is the timeline though.
Yes.
And that's what people need to understand. And, that agents work with is you've got to get it done before closing. So it's not it's not big issues, but it's issues that, you can't just poo-poo away and, because the appraiser will have to, come back and take a look to make sure it was done. So,
so those are usually the main ones. Like floor coverings, that's not necessarily a VA specific thing, but those are kind of some Like if there's a bedroom or a room that doesn't have any carpet or hardwood flooring or anything, it's just subfloor.
Yeah.
There usually has to be some form of floor covering on there. Exposed electrical or plumbing, maybe there was a repair that was done and it just hasn't been patched, or there's a, in the garage there's a little 2x2 section of exposed wiring, maybe not
Yeah.
like wires hanging out everywhere, but just exposed. They might ask for that to be covered up. But honestly, there's not a lot that really comes out. Oh, actually, another one that's pretty common are if there's a deck of any kind and it's more than 36 inches, I think is the height. Maybe it's a little less than that. I can't remember off the top of my head. It will need a railing of some kind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that could just be a 2x4 railing. And if there's, I think it's more than 3 stairs, then there needs to be a hand railing too. So we see that a lot on those smaller decks. It's just like even a landing, right? Like coming off the back porch area, there's just a little landing deck and a
Yeah.
couple steps. And sometimes those will get called out for safety. But most of the time it's for those shorter ones that, you're not thinking you could have a 5-year-old walk off that deck and they'd be fine.
For sure.
So I think a lot of times people just, because it closes things in and what's the point, and they just kind of get overlooked. But usually that stuff will get called out. Outside of that, it's really larger things that would be called out on most loans, where it's like a leaking roof or the gutters,
For sure.
the gutters hanging off, and it's just more obvious things that I feel like most people could walk around and say that doesn't look like it's supposed to be how it is. But it's usually health and safety.
I guess, is the biggest. Yeah, the biggest thing that we see. And so, if someone is looking at a VA loan and finding a heavy fixer, it's probably not in the cards.
Yeah.
Because especially like you said, simple things like you're like, oh, okay, there's no flooring. It's like, we're going to fix this or we're going to remodel this.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not going to fly with a VA loan because it has to be livable, right? Like the generic thing is it has to be a livable home. I mean, so they see those things as non-livable. So
yeah. And
I see the strictest with that.
And like I said, most of the time it's smaller things. If there are large things, they're usually, for the most part, kind of seen in the beginning, like before you even put an offer in, or maybe during the inspection side of it. Yeah. So we kind of know what to expect going into it. But overall, it's usually pretty quick fixes.
Yeah.
One that can get called out too. I just had this called out on a USDA loan. There were some like blackberries and just a little bit of brush touching the house. And they wanted those cut back and not touching the house. So usually, government loans, so FHA, USDA, VA, those tend to be a little bit more strict. And then a conventional loan, it's not a government loan, even though Fannie, Freddie are pretty much ran by the government. They go off a little looser requirements from the appraisal side. So the appraiser might notate that, but not say needs to be done in order for me to sign off on it.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's a couple things that, I've seen in the real estate world, like agents asking. One, and it generally, man, I'm going off the top of my head, so I could be completely wrong. But agents have talked about lenders. There are certain lenders that are requiring that, like that want the inspection report and things like that. I don't know if you've heard of that or no.
I have not. No,
Okay.
I've never.
I think it's pretty rare. I think that's why it's talked about, as people are like, the lender's asking for this, the lender's asking for this inspection report, and should I do it?
Sure. And the only thing I could maybe think of would be
maybe special programs or something.
I don't even know if that would be the case, but the only thing I could think of is maybe if there is something, if the appraiser is asking for something and maybe we can prove that that's not the case or something based on the inspection to show, hey, the inspector did a deep dive on this and here's really the situation. That's the only thing I can think of. I can't think of a situation where I have needed to use the inspection report for anything. And the main reason is because in order to get a loan, you don't have to have an inspection done.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not part of the requirement.
Which is kind of odd because I think with the strictness of mortgages, I feel like an inspection, with some of the silly things that mortgage lenders need and require, not that I want this to happen, but like a lending thing or an inspection to just show that the house is solid, I feel like would be like a normal thing for like, we're going to loan you $700,000 We want to
Right.
see that the house is in good working order,
Yep.
It would
Yeah.
open a whole can of worms, but
It would.
it does seem odd that like that's not one that they care about. But they're like, if you didn't give me your bonus yesterday, I need
Yeah.
to know like your last 18 years of your life now.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
it's
The
so
house. Oh, we
odd
don't really care about the
sometimes.
house. Just,
Yeah, no.
as long
It's
as the
like,
appraiser says it's fine, then that's fine.
yeah, you spent $500 on this. We're gonna have to underwrite
Yeah.
this thing again because
Right.
yeah. So interesting.
Yeah. I just got through a situation where an inspection would have been very nice. It was a guy that was buying the house from somebody that he knew. So there were no real estate agents involved. It was just between him and the seller.
Okay.
And he knew that the house wasn't in great shape, and it wasn't at all. Appraisal, and then it was on a septic and on well.
Okay.
Most of the time, like depending on the loan program, we have to get a septic inspection and a water test just to verify
Remind
that
me,
there's
I
no,
gotta ask you about that.
yeah, that there's no contaminants in the water. It's, that's kind of a health and safety thing, and just making sure that the septic tank works and is normal. And through this transaction, they had to get a roof redone because that would have obviously shown up on the inspection.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
come to find out that there were tarps on the roof. So the guy told me, yeah, I think the roof could probably use some work done to it. But
At least a retarp, like a little new blue tarp for it.
Yeah. So had to get a new roof on there. And then during the septic inspection, found out that the tank was an old steel tank that was just rusted out and nasty. So the tank had to get replaced as well.
Okay.
So I think the nice thing with an inspection, and part of why I think it would make sense to almost be more of a requirement, is to not find these things out farther down the road.
For sure. Yeah.
Because one, we found out through the appraisal, and then the other one was through the septic inspection that had to happen. Granted, if it didn't have to happen,
yeah,
he would have got into the house and eventually found out that his tank was rotted out, and then he's going to have to go spend $7,000 on something when it could have been figured out during the transaction.
For sure.
And I think it just makes sense too. Like, wouldn't you want to? I mean, nobody really wants to spend $500, $600, $700 or however much it's going to be for the inspections that you need to get everything done. But holy smokes, like think about it with a car, It sucks enough to have to spend a couple $1,000s on fixing a part for a car, but like houses, I mean, the guy's roof was $20,000 and it was like a 1,300 square foot home.
Yeah. It's not something that people should pass on. I don't know. We do it all the time. And during the COVID times, it was common to just waive inspection.
Yeah.
It was very hard as a buying agent to, advise them. And I never did advise them to do it. I just, I said, this is an option to look like a better offer, but I don't encourage it, because I think like this is the prime time, one, just from a negotiating standpoint of the time that you can start maybe whittling down price or getting more in closing cost credit or those sort of things. So from an agent to negotiate, it helps a lot. But also, like you said, there's problems, especially sewer scope thing. It's like $150 to do a sewer scope. And I'm like, why not? Because there are more often than not, I wouldn't say more often than not, but it's fairly common to have root intrusions or various things that now are like turned from $150 inspection that caught a $8,000 sewer pipe repair. Yeah, I never, even new construction has issues. And so I always am like, you got to get an inspection. So people out there that are kind of considering, is it worth it? The $1,000, I always just round to $1,000. That's just including everything. Like for $1,000 to potentially expose, upwards, but on the low end, I would say you generally expose at least a couple grand in every inspection of issues, all the way up to new roofs and $30,000, $40,000 fixes. Well worth the investment on your new home. But having said that, they will nitpick everything. Your inspector works for you. They're looking for everything wrong with the home. So it's important to talk to the agent, about kind of what they see commonly, what is like the bigger issues. Your inspector should be able to talk to you and have a conversation about this isn't a big deal. This is, I put in the report, but this is not something that, this is something I see commonly with homes of that age or this area or whatever the case might be.
Sure. You probably have to do a lot of walking through with buyers on what is more normal and what is maybe something that, hey, that's probably something that we'd want to ask on. Because I would imagine you probably get some people that are like, holy smokes, this is crazy. We need to ask for everything to be fixed. And it's like, well, just because the outlet in the hallway is a little wobbly, like
I know,
probably going to be okay.
Yeah. And I get it. Like, it's very difficult to walk through with clients to say, and it's hard because it's like, I want this house to be functional when I walk in. I'm paying a ton of money for it.
Right.
But yeah, going over like, okay, this is, yes, it's being called out, but this is something that, it's really tick-tacky to ask for, where we can maybe ask for this bigger issue, because they're going to have to address that with any buyer that comes through. So it's kind of finding that fine balance of like, playing the market, playing the seller's motivation, playing everything, to the benefit of the buyer. So
yeah.
Okay. Is this particular to your company? This is the same question we've had with agents. You guys require a septic inspection and report, which when I first worked with you, I was like, what is this? Like, because I don't think every lender does it. Is this residential mortgage specific, or is this, do you find most of the lenders? I don't know. Like, I don't get it asked a lot to have a septic done for a lender. And it always makes me nervous when you guys are like, hey, can I have the septic report? I'm like, no, I don't want to give you any inspections.
No, thanks.
Anyways, explain that, like, for people that, are buying on a septic, like farm properties, big, large acreage type of properties.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the time it gets to be a requirement. But what I have learned, because I've had some loans where it wasn't a requirement and then others where it is. And what I've learned is it is a little more investor specific.
Okay.
Meaning, like, say it's Fannie Mae, right? Fannie Mae conventional loan. That's who's like backing the loan. Because when we lock the loan, it can be through a variety of different, like, investors, I guess you could say. So even though it's a Fannie Mae loan, it might be locked through this company or this
for sure
option, and they have their own set of regulations. So I think sometimes it's just a matter of which one, because some will have better rates than other options will.
Okay.
So we tend to go with, hey, this one's got the best rate, we're going with this one.
Okay.
So there are little variations with it, but not all of them seem to require it.
Yeah.
But I will say too that I've had 2 now over my 13 years of the septic report showing major issues.
Okay.
Which was obviously a blessing for the buyer, probably sucks for the seller. But it was both of them, the whole unit needed to be replaced. So as much as it does suck to have to get them and go through that and share what it looks like, it is a nice thing to have it known and out in the open.
For sure.
To have it fixed. But long-winded answer your question, they don't always seem to be required. Water tests can be a little bit more on the norm, just because you're consuming the water all the time.
Yeah, I think like this fear with me was, you're always told as like a young agent of like, do not, like the lender does not want to see the inspection. So when, your assistant or whatever was like, hey, can you send this septic? I was like, no, I'm not showing you anything.
Right.
But it's not that big of a deal. And the thing is like septic, is if there's a huge issue, you want it fixed anyway, and it's a negotiating tool. So
and
going back to like, you should get an inspection, you should just get an inspection, all those stuff, like, so that if there is a issue, especially septics, because septics last a long time, and most people never truly, like, most people never replace them. So if you're on a property that's like built in the 1970s or 60s or fees, like, that septic tank's probably from then.
Yeah.
And it may be fine, but it's definitely worth something, checking out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The septic and water thing, that's been a conversation that's been had around here.
Yeah.
To dive into that a little bit more too, and figuring out, like, all right, we need to have a little bit of consistency here, because it's not like I try to forewarn everybody that's getting on septic or like, hey, there's a chance that we might need the inspection reports for those, or but there should be, in my opinion, a blanket, you're either going to need it or you're not going to need it. It can't be either or like, oh, hey, we didn't need one on
this time we did, and this time we didn't. Yeah. For sure.
Because it's hard, because I want to get that information up front right away.
For sure.
But there have been times where it's gone through underwriting and it's not been asked for, and it wasn't typically if it's the appraiser thinks that there's any concern, say they turn on the water and at first it's like kind of brown and murky and then it clears up. That might be something where they make a note of that, or they flush the toilet and it made a weird sound, and or there's a weird odor. They might say, hey, might need to have the septic tank looked at to see if it needs to be pumped or noticed a weird odor. Those, I could see those triggering something to say,
Yeah,
hey,
for
maybe
sure.
we need to dive into that a little bit more. But as a general rule, I feel like it should either be it is required or it's not required. It
I
can't
know, and
just
it's
be
odd that
why is it on this one and not on
it's
that one.
odd because I
Yeah,
get that septic can be a big problem, but so can a roof. Like,
totally.
so you could just say you have to have a roof inspection. I
Right.
don't, everything you
Yep.
could go down that route. So it is odd how lenders are just like sometimes and such a unique, I don't want to say it's a unique thing, but such a, like you said, a weird topic to be like septic has to be done
Yeah.
sometimes because we won't lend you on this. It's like,
Huh?
okay, but what, I could have a leaky roof, like just, there's no requirement there, so
I know.
it's kind of weird. It's all
It's
weird.
very weird. And I hate inconsistencies in the lending side because there's already so much
But yeah,
that
yeah,
that comes up and happens. And then when you have something where you're not expecting it or not don't think that you're
for
going to
sure.
need it, and then you find out that you need it and
For
you're
sure.
a week and a half away from closing, and it's like now everybody's got to scramble because
To
we didn't
freak
know that
out.
we had
Yeah,
to
get
have
all it
this. And
done.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I didn't know we had to either. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's important, obviously. Inspections are important. To sum
Yep.
all this up, it's good to
Yeah.
get them. Don't be freaked out by them. Have an agent that knows what they're doing and walks you through each of the inspections, and have a lender that knows what they're doing and knows what ones you are required. There's not a lot of requirements with what you need to do, but if you are buying property, we have had those where you have to get a septic whether you like it or not. So something to talk about when you are doing farm properties or acreage, not even acreage, just properties that have a septic versus city sewer. So
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking from someone that, not to toot my own horn or anything, but I'm fairly handy as
mhm.
far as the contractor construction side of things. Every time I see an inspection, I'm like, wow, I would have, I feel like I know what I'm looking for, but I'm
Yeah,
looking
and
for
it's like
big
I had no
things. And
idea.
the
Yeah,
the amount of things that they find, like,
for sure.
props to the inspectors out there because the amount of things that they can find and document in detail and turn that
Yeah,
report around within like 24 hours, like
yeah, it's
it blows
crazy.
my mind how much information is in there. And it's not just like a template that they go, oh, okay, I'll insert this here and
Yeah,
cool, there you go. It's like it is specific to that house. And
to that house. Yeah,
I've always been blown away how quickly they can find those things, document it. They give you like a green color, orange color, red color,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
severity. Like
To
they're
let you
very,
know what's
very
going on. Yeah.
knowledgeable.
No, it's good, and that's important to get a good inspector because there are good and bad, just like in real estate, just like in lending. It's like you can get ones that don't know what they're doing or don't care or don't are lazy or.
Yeah.
And so really finding the right inspector is important too because yeah, you can get screwed on inspections. If your
Hmm.
inspector missed something because they were just lazy, and wanted to get through
Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah,
I've ran into that before where
for sure, for sure.
they're wanting to go after the inspector afterwards because they find it out, a month after they moved in, and they're like, this was not, how did the inspector not
I know,
notice
missed
this?
something
And
so
we feel like we
obvious.
should go after him. And I'm like, I'm going to just,
Yeah,
I'll be over here.
we've got a good list of trusted inspectors, but man, it brings me back to like just to conclude all this, it's just a crazy industry that we're in that you can buy you can buy a $3 million property from an agent who has had zero training, from
Uh
a
huh.
lender who has had zero. I think the lending standards a little higher, like for just knowing for Christina and you, like you guys have to go through a decent amount of stuff. Like I think real estate inspectors, all that stuff is like you can get really terrible people making a
Sure.
multi-million-dollar purchase, or you can get, it just is so weird to me
Uh
that
huh.
there's like not a different standard, like the not a higher standard. And obviously
Right.
coming from the law enforcement world, that just was what it was. Like you're dealing with people's civil
Sure.
rights and their life and death and taking their, rights away and taking
Uh
everything away.
huh.
So I was so used to just a high bar of where you had to be good at that. And now it's like our bars are like this.
Uh huh.
You could be under it, you could be over it, whatever.
Sure.
And as long as that seller or buyer likes you, then
Uh huh.
go do this. We just had a property. What was it? Christina was just mentioning it. Just I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent. She's like, this agent, like it was a huge property, like multi-million-dollar, and the agent, like she had been talking to, and she's like, I don't know how do they feel confident hiring these people? Like,
Uh
how are
huh.
they? I want to be in their listing appointment to be like, what do you say that
Right.
convinces people like that you should be the one to sell their house? It's just so
Huh.
insane to me. But anyways, off on a
I know.
tangent. Get good inspectors, get good lenders, get good agents, and you should be good. So
Yep. That sums it up right
our
there.
conversation. Okay, my man. Well, it was good talking to you, and thank you for going over all that stuff. It answered some of my questions that I have for you when I'm like, Cody, don't ask me for these things. I don't want to give you inspections, and you're like, give me the septic.
That's all you have to do in the next time. Just say no.
Yeah, that's what I do. Just ignore.
We'll just
ignore
go back
until
and say,
we get too close.
They're not going to give it to us, so we're good.
Okay, man. Well, until next time, we will chat with you soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. Have a good week.
See ya.